So leadership to me is doing. I can't tell the boys that work for me how to do something if I'm not willing to jump in and do it with them. It rubs off on people that are around you as well. Like, it's hard to work with someone that's actually enjoying their work if you're grumpy, because you look and go, look at this bloke, how can I be grumpy around him and he's loving what he's doing? Try and understand people before you make a judgment call on what they're saying or what they're doing. If you change that perspective, it will change how you talk back to people and how you talk to people and how you act with people.
Welcome to Tradies Who Lead, the podcast bringing practical leadership to every tradie. I'm Ashley Baltecki, a diesel mechanic by trade and your host. Every episode, you'll hear from tradies across all industries, sharing how they apply leadership in their role, regardless of their title or experience. Real stories, real lessons, so you can learn from them and level up your leadership on site. In this episode, we cover the importance of understanding people and how it changes the way you lead and changes your team's performance. My guest today is a registered carpenter and the owner of Kingsford Building and Carpentry in Metro Melbourne, a small team specialising in bathrooms, extensions and detailed internal fit-outs. With over 15 years in the trade, Adrian Gillman manages projects end to end, bringing together hands-on building knowledge with strong estimating, compliance and client communication. But the tools are only part of the story. Adrian is also the Vice President of the West Coburg Football Club, where he's been active in both coaching and committee leadership, working to build a strong community-focused culture on and off the oval. Away from work and football, he keeps bees, maintaining hives with the same patient, detail-driven approach he brings to everything else. He's also into early morning gym sessions, golf, travel, and something a little bit different, glass blowing. He's someone who's built a life around showing up in his business, his club, his community, and his family, and transformed the way he leads by understanding others better before making decisions. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today, Adrian.
No worries at all. Pleasure to be here.
I'm really excited for this chat because you've had a really unique career experience, not just as a tradesperson, but before I give anything away, the first question I ask every guest is, what does leadership look like to you as a carpenter and a business owner?
So leadership to me is doing. It's probably the best way to describe it. I can't tell the boys that work for me how to do something if I can't do it myself, or if I'm not willing to jump in and do it with them. So doing is probably the biggest thing in leadership. And then I suppose after that, it's just knowledge and giving as much knowledge as I can. Sometimes the boys take it on, sometimes they don't. I'm happy to share my experiences with anyone, and if someone gets something from it, then that's a good thing. If not, then it's no harm.
That point around being willing to do the work that you're asking other people to do definitely comes up a lot on the podcast. And it's really interesting because we understand that from a leadership point of view, that willingness to do the thing we're asking others to do is about trust and consistency and integrity. But it's obviously out of our control how well people take that on board. But it's something that's really important for us to do as leaders, to actually demonstrate that leadership to our teams. Where did your leadership journey begin, or where did you start to see yourself as a leader?
I know it's a bit sort of cliche, but I think it's just been a natural thing. I've never really seen myself as a leader. It's just sort of happened, I suppose. I started working when I was 14. I'm now 49, so a few years of work under the belt, and been in a few different jobs along the way. But in all my jobs, I've sort of worked my way through hard work, I suppose, and trying to learn as much as I can up to the higher levels of each job. And then just, again, doing my job as well as I can do it. And I suppose for those that are around me, they take that on board as well. And I think it just becomes a natural sort of leadership thing.
So when you say they take that on board, is that as in because that's the way you show up, that's the example you set, and so other people follow that example?
I think so, yeah. And I enjoy what I do. I've never stayed in a job where I don't enjoy what I do. And so when I go to work, it's not doom and gloom. You know, I'm not there because I've just got to make pay to pay rent sort of thing. I'm there because I actually enjoy it. And I think if you enjoy what you do, it rubs off on people that are around you as well. Like, it's hard to work with someone that's actually enjoying their work if you're grumpy, because you look and go, geez, look at this bloke, how can I be grumpy around him? And he's loving what he's doing. And I think it elevates and lifts people up. So I think that in itself is a form of leadership as well. And your decision making. So if I was in a job where I went, you know what, I really don't like this job, I don't like the way that people treat me, and I've only done it once, and it took a lot, but I walked away. I just walked out and said, look, I'm done. And I know it left the business in a bit of a hole. It was a hospitality job when I was younger, so it wasn't as if the world had collapsed around me. I just had to work a bit harder, and the owner was there, and he wasn't a nice guy, and I just went, you know what, it's not a nice environment. The people here, they're not enjoying themselves. The clients are here, they're obviously having a drink, but they don't look happy being here. And I just went, this is not me, this is not where I want to be. And I went, mate, I can't work here. And I just went. So, yeah, it's those decisions. It was a hard decision to make because I felt I was letting him down and people down. But in the end, I went, well, I'm not. I'm basically here suffering because of someone else.
I've definitely experienced it in the trade where, you know, whether it's taking a sick day, whether it's leaving to pursue a new opportunity, there can often be this kind of banter around, oh, you're leaving us, you're putting us in a tough spot. And at first it can be good-natured, but often with repetition, and because it happens in every workplace, often from numerous people, numerous times, it kind of stops being funny. The kind of banter part of it falls away, and it's like, oh, this is actually starting to feel a bit ick. And then that obviously has an impact on, if people are unhappy, they still stay out of the sense of expectation or not wanting to put people out. And obviously in small business, losing one person has a massive impact, but it's the impact of that unhappy person or that grumpy tradie still exists as well when people stay. And when we think about the fact that we have issues and challenges in our sector around apprentice retention and around culture, we can see how sometimes some of these things that we've normalised around being a grumpy tradie, staying, like it's not okay to look after yourself and take a sick day, these unintentional pressures that we put on each other with this banter, that just gets repeated so much that it stops being a joke and it starts feeling serious. That's having obviously an impact on what our workplace environment is. But what do you think we get wrong in our industry around the fact that we can have so many grumpy tradies, and we've normalised that for our industry and for the people who work in this industry?
This is a learning thing for me. When I changed, a bit of a trajectory, when I changed from going out of the trades and into more of a corporate role, I did a lot of work on myself, coming off building sites, and sometimes you speak your mind very quickly, and sometimes you use some very descriptive words that aren't welcome in an office environment. And I ended up in an office environment that was full of middle-aged ladies, so I had to change my language very quickly and learn about this new environment. And I was lucky enough that the company had a business coach at the time, and I really leaned on them and said, look, this is what I'm struggling with. I'm struggling to communicate. And so I did a lot of stuff on understanding people. Everyone has their own issues in life. You've got employees that come to work, they've got money issues, they've got marital issues, they've got whatever other issues there are. And if they sort of go, I'm leaving because I need more money, and you can't give them more money, you've got to sort of sit down and go, okay, so let's unpack it a bit and let's find out what's happening. It's got to be more personal, and you've got to understand people before you can jump to that conclusion of, you know, you're just a shithead and you want to leave me in the lurch sort of thing, you know. Before I did all this, I was that bloke. I sat there and went, I'm paying you a fortune here, and you're on a good wicket, and I'm doing everything I can, and you're going to leave me in the shit, mate. You know, what are you doing? And I'm just walking around going, oh no, it's crap. How do you win as a business owner? This is unbelievable. Poor me sort of thing. But the more you sort of sit with them, you sort of sit down and you sort of go, what's going on for you? Sort of thing. And sometimes they won't tell you, and then other times they'll just blurt it out, and you're sort of left going, I wasn't expecting that much, you know. I was expecting to say, oh, you know, Mrs. wants another kid or something like that. We can't afford another kid. We need more money, you know, or we're living in a place where we can't afford, or, you know, those sort of things. You can sort of talk it out, and sometimes it's easy, and then other times it's hard. And But I think the people that work for you appreciate the fact that you're actually there and caring about them as well and listening. I think that helps you retain your employees rather than just going, well, mate, I pay you to do a job, do the job. I don't care about your family life. I don't care about you. You're making me money. Just do the job and get on with it, can you? Hurry up. So I think that's what we get wrong as tradies and business owners, because it's the same thing with the tradie, right? We've got to work in... Being a chippy, we get to see the plumbers, we get to see the tilers, we get to see the painters, we get plasterers, we get to see all the trades. Now, it only takes one bloke to come in on a site that's full of blokes and it's grumpy, and he starts yelling and screaming and carrying on, and the whole place goes quiet, like, what a dickhead, you know. Why does he have to do that for? Whereas I think if someone actually sat down and said, mate, are you all right? He might turn around and go, you know what, I'm not. I need this. And I don't think we talk enough as trades, because I think there's an ego, there's that muncho sort of attitude where if something's wrong, we just work through it and we'll be right, and next day we get up and do it again. And I think that whole stigma, I know there's organisations out there at the moment trying to break that stigma. I think it really needs to be broken pretty quick, because there is a lot of trades and a lot of people, unfortunately, not going home because they keep that muncho attitude up, and it gets to a point where they don't see any other option but to do what they do, and it's not the right option. People need to speak up about it more, and if you're struggling, talk. But if you see a mate or you see a bloke on site that's struggling and going off his head, maybe just ask him, are you all right? And then spend 5 minutes and have that, you know, he might just blurt it out, and you might go, man, this is well over my head, I can't deal with this fella. But you know what? He might feel better just saying it, and it might prevent something further serious happening down the track. So I think that's our biggest problem, is the attitude for trades.
I think you touched on something really common, especially for our leaders and supervisors in the trades, is that sometimes our supervisors can have this attitude of, I don't care how you take this instruction, or I don't care how you feel, and it doesn't really take into account how to get the best out of people, and how, if we understand them, we can adjust our behaviour to help them be more productive, more engaged, and more successful in the workplace, not just as an individual, but as a team member. And that macho attitude of, that's not my job, to care about that emotional or that relational workload is a shame, because that is the nature of being a leader, and really being able to create those high performance teams where people feel valued and like they have a voice. And it's not to say that as a leader you lose control or you lose your ability to be the person who directs and leads a team, but it just creates space for people to be more engaged and to have stronger relationships, to work better together in a team. Now, you called it a corporate career, but you obviously had a career change where you went and were running a funeral home, which is an environment I imagine has a lot of emotional workload. So what did you learn from that experience that changed how you show up as a leader?
I learned a fair bit, to be honest. Mostly I learned about people, and I learned about myself. So I started there as a desk clerk, I suppose, data entry. The company I was working for as their construction manager went into liquidation. Obviously a few bad decisions somewhere along the line in the upper echelon. And my father-in-law was running the funeral home at the time. And he rang up, and my wife was pregnant with our first, and I was offering her a job just to answer some phones and stuff. And she said, oh, you know, Adrian's no longer working. He rang me, goes, you want to do it? I said, yeah, look, all right, no worries. I said, as long as I don't have to do anything with dead bodies, I said, I'm happy to come and do what you've got to do. So I started in their office answering calls, which was quite confronting as well, because obviously you're dealing with people that are grieving and they're ringing because they haven't got a lot of money, they're looking for a funeral, and someone in their family's passed away. So there was that whole sort of, again, that really sort of muncho attitude from building sites doesn't work in that environment. So it was really tapping into the empathy and stuff that I have inside, and listening. So listening was a major thing, because people tend to get on the phone, and as soon as they hear someone talking, they'll just urge. And so the information comes thick and fast, and you're sort of listening and writing and hoping you're getting everything right. And then there's obviously tears involved as well. So it's a pretty sort of full-on phone call to sort of get, which I had training for. It wasn't just, you know, start answering the phone and get into it. But nothing teaches you like real life experience, does it? So they went through scenarios and that sort of stuff. I was like, yeah, I should have this. And then the first person rings and says, my husband at 50 years has died, and you're like, and they start crying. And you're like, oh, what? Do I talk? Don't I talk? What do I say? Should I say I'm sorry? Don't say you're sorry. You don't know them. There's all those sort of things. So it was really learning about myself. Again, so I started in that job. I identified a few things where they could improve their business side of things. I was telling my father-in-law, you need to do this. Like, they were buying coffins from a third-tier supplier. And I said, why don't you buy direct? You'll save a bit more money, blah, blah, blah. So he took these things, unbeknownst to me, to the board every time they had a board meeting, and told them all these new ideas. And so everything started to change a bit more. We systemised stuff. We put stuff on computers for records. And next thing I know, I had the board standing in the office where I was, and they said, your father-in-law's been telling us about all your ideas, and you can't go back to construction. And I'm like, right, I was only here temporarily. This is not my full-time gig. I didn't sign up for this. And I'm still looking at him going, why did you say it was me? I'm giving this to you. And he's like, I don't want to do the office part. So I became their office manager, for lack of better words, I suppose, or their business manager. So I looked at stuff like where the need was for the demographic, and there was a massive need in Geelong at the time. We were in Oakley, so southeast. In the north, there was a massive need for our services as well. So just identifying locations, and then obviously trying to work out how to get our services out to those people. We're only a small company. There was probably 15 employees. So and out of those 15 employees, most of them were funeral directors. So they'd be out daily meeting families and also conducting services. So as you can see, I don't fit the normal funeral director profile. I have a beard, I have tattoos, I wasn't as clean cut or as well manicured as a lot of funeral directors. So I was happy with the office side of things. I did go on a few funerals at the start, which I found, and no offence to anyone, incredibly boring. The only part I liked about the funeral was when they do the photos, because I felt that gave a nice reflection of someone's life, and you can sort of look through photos and get sort of an idea of where they came from and where they went to. The rest to me was all just talk, basically. I did do a funeral with my father-in-law, and it was at a church for a homeless man, which we were expecting no one to attend, and the church was full, and some of his family got up and berated him, which made my jaw drop to the ground. That was another learning for me, I suppose, because I thought, you go to a funeral, you go there because you know the person and you're paying your respects. So in the hearse on the way back, I didn't say much. My father-in-law goes, are you all right? And I said, why would you go? Why would you go if you were that upset with the person? And he basically turned around and said, it happens, and it's because it's their last chance to say something. Or they may have been bottling up all those feelings, and that's the only time they could say it without hurting that person. And I'm like, yeah, right. So human beings are very complex things.
So you obviously lead a small team now, and you have that experience of being involved in a small team and leading a business in the funeral space, but then you're also involved in your local footy club. Across all of those environments or any sort of team or community, how do you actually create a culture where people are engaged and you can get the best out of them, whether that's on the field or on a building site?
Yeah, so creating culture is a really big thing. I think it's something a lot of people take for granted, and it starts from the smallest things. So I think part of your culture is when you lead as a person, if you're doing it, that helps create the culture. Systemization of things, being consistent with what you do in your actions and in your words, and then just trying to keep people safe. So especially footy clubs, I've just been elected to be vice president, which takes on a different role. As a committee, it's good. You get a group decision and majority rules. As a vice president, you probably get a little bit more in depth of what's happening. And we've got it's not a fractured culture. Some of the club want to be win at all cost, and we're a community-based club, so we can't be win at all cost. We're never going to be a big powerhouse club. So we're trying to build now from the base of the foundation, the culture around the community-based club again, to keep that going from the ground basically all the way through to our seniors. Building culture is hard, especially if people don't want to get on board. So you will lose people along the way that don't believe in what you're trying to create and what you're trying to build, and you've got to let them go. That's the only thing. Sometimes they can be your best mate, and if they don't believe in your culture, then they're not going to work with you. So culture is really important. In the small team that we have at the moment, we have a thing where we've got an Argentinian guy come across, work for us, who was a builder over there. He's doing his Cert 3 in carpentry here. He sort of come and said, it was someone's birthday coming up, and he goes, on birthdays, we have a tradition where we all go out and have a meal, and the birthday person doesn't pay. Great. It's now part of our culture that we do it. So I'm a good boss, hearing it out there. I get to let the boys take a day off, we go and have lunch, and that's it. So I pay them for the day anyway. We have lunch. So that's part of the culture. That's part of wanting to be involved with them. And sharing something like a birthday is pretty personal. So some people don't like celebrating their birthdays, and some people love celebrating their birthdays. But I think everyone needs to be around someone on their birthday. Even if you don't like celebrating it, I think it's good to acknowledge it. And if you have a lunch and you have a bit of a laugh and a couple of beers, and then everyone goes on their way, even if you don't want to celebrate your birthday, I think people can accept that and they go, yeah, I like that. So it just builds morale within the team. He knows that we listen. He's as valuable as anyone else in the team, and whatever he thinks is important, we think is important as well. So again, it comes back to communication, and I suppose, and listening to your people that you work with. That's how you're going to build the best culture you can build. And the same with football clubs. You listen to your members, and then obviously you put it into an environment, and you take the best of what you can put into that environment. And obviously there's a lot of things you've got to check off against, health and safety, risk, all that sort of stuff. As long as it all meets those criteria, you put it in, and that's what builds your culture of anything, basically.
It's very clear that the cultures you build represent how you show up as a leader, from getting to understand people better so you can help navigate engaging them in the workplace, and actually getting to know them on a personal level and giving back to the community. And I often think back to my parents telling me that work stays at work and home stays at home when I started my apprenticeship. And it's a bit of a old school mentality that we have that just, it never really worked, and those lines definitely blur more now than ever. But I imagine because you're also in a space where you're dealing with a lot of young people, whether that's in your footy club or dealing with apprentices in the next generation, they have a bad rap for not being as engaged in the workplace and having very different ideas of work and different expectations. So from your experiences, how do you see, as an industry and as tradespeople, that we can actually better engage the next generation of tradies, even when they have a different opinion of what the workplace should or could look like?
I think we need to embrace the fact that the world is changing. When I was a kid, my father was a plumber. So we spent weekends digging holes and stuff for him. That was just part of what you did. Dad worked on the weekend, you'd go dig a trench, and that was it. And I think that sort of led into your design around how working life would work. These days it doesn't work like that. We've got kids that come from parents that are doctors or in that sort of sector, and they come to us wanting to be a carpenter. And they've got different ideas about what work actually is. That's around understanding where they come from and working with them. But I'm pretty big on this, if anyone wants to listen to my opinion on it. The system around apprentices is broken. What we teach them is outdated. So there's more modern ways to teach carpentry. We're still teaching kids, and don't get me wrong, you need to know how to use a chisel properly. I 100% agree with that. But when you're sending your 18 or 19 or 20-year-old to trade school and they're making a groove into timber, into pine with a chisel, and then they come back going, why can't we use a trimmer? It's there, it's right in front of us. And I'm like, it's to get your skills. I understand it's to get your skills. But they're going, yeah, but it's quicker to do this. And on site, we're going to use that. We're not going to use that. So I think there's a disconnection in the school side of things. And especially, I know they've tried to modernise it and go, look, we'll do on-site training, or we'll send you to school for 2 days every 4 weeks sort of thing. And everyone learns at different paces. So generally by lunchtime, I've got the apprentice ringing me going, do you want me to come back to work because I can go home? And I'm like, no, just stay and do more work, or go home and do something, mate. It's fine. But then I also know the other side of it too, where you've got someone that isn't learning as fast. So they're all sort of clumped in and going, right, and it's just tick, 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 tick. push you through, out the other side, you're now a carpenter.
There's definitely a lot of challenges, and I have no doubt that we could talk about it for a long time. And I do see as well that there is this tension in the system where employers send their apprentices to trade school to learn, but then sometimes overlook the role they have in that learning journey for apprentices. And so there seems to be a lot of disconnect between the workplaces and the industry versus what's happening in trade schools. And it's so easy to be frustrated, especially when you don't see the whole system and understand how the parts move. And I imagine as well from your experience in not-for-profits and committees, you understand how slow some of these changes can be and how diverse the stakeholders can be in terms of why things are the way they are and why that change can be slow. And there is definitely a lot we could be doing better for our apprentices. But at least within our teams, it sounds like that if we can again apply that understanding and get to know the person better, then that's the way that we're able to engage them, get to know them better so that they can be productive in the workplace, rather than telling them they're right or wrong for what they view the workplace as or what their expectations are, and instead just accept that they have different ideas and kind of find a way to meet them where they're at.
Yeah. 100%. We have the radio going on site all the time, and I think it was Madonna came on, and I said, everyone sort of sing along doing their thing, and I said, you like Madonna? He goes, who's Madonna? And then I sort of looked at Pete, who works with us, who's older, and he goes, did he just? I said, yeah. And I said, mate, put your music on, and within 2 minutes it's like, please turn it off. Yeah. It's not even music. So, but we'll talk about movies, and he'll talk about if it was a remake, they'll talk about, I've seen this movie. It's like, that's a remake of the movie that was made. Yeah, but if this one's better, it's like, so it's just talk and trying to understand where they come from. I've got 2 teenage boys and they talk a different language as well. So, and what's important to them isn't important to us. And what they see is important to us, it probably isn't important to them. So it's just trying to find that common ground and a way of communicating to them that, hey, this is, so, at the end of every night when we finish work, sweeping the site up, that's really important to me. I like leaving it nice and tidy and safe, whereas you might not think it's important to you because it's just a bit of sawdust. But it goes to our presentation of our company, and it's just trying to find that explanation to go, it's really important to me. So even though you don't think it's important to you, if you could do that for me, I'd be really appreciative of it. And then they go, yeah, no worries. And it just happens because you have that connection. Whereas if you had no connection, you go, mate, I need you to clean up. It's important to me. It's not important to me. I didn't have time, boss. You get that sort of stuff, and you're like, yeah, I get it, but it's 5 minutes. Yeah, I didn't have time.
You really showcase that role of relationships, and that if we can develop strong relationships with our team, then that's where we have the influence to guide their behaviour or to help get them to do the things that we want them to do, and they can understand why they're being asked to do that rather than there being resistance around it. Now, the final question I ask every guest on the podcast is, what advice would you give to other tradies about how they can practice and demonstrate leadership every day?
Try and understand people before you make a judgment call on what they're saying or what they're doing. Try and understand where they're coming from when they're saying something to you. If you change that perspective, it will change how you talk back to people and how you talk to people and how you act with people. Understanding people or trying to understand as much as you can about them, it will change how you connect with them.
I think that really nicely wraps up pretty much the core of everything you've shared on the podcast today in terms of understanding people and having that care factor. And that's really what enables us to be successful as individuals and teams and as businesses. So thank you so much for everything you've shared on the podcast today. I've learned a lot and I've enjoyed hearing about your career experiences and how it shaped the leader you are in the industry as a tradie today.
No worries. Thanks very much for having me. It's been good. It's been fun.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another tradie diving into how they apply leadership in the trades. If you enjoyed this episode, help us reach more tradies by tapping like, subscribe to Tradies Who Lead, or following us on socials to hear more stories from your favourite guests.